Okay, thank you for joining us today. My name is Evelise Burgos from the Ombudsman Office in Atlantic Cape May County. Meet the Court is a live summer weekly series of webinars via Zoom to inform the public about various programs, services, and more. Today's presentation will provide general information and feature a Q&A at the end. You may submit general non-case specific questions at any point in the Q&A function in your Zoom app, and the speaker will address it at the end of the seminar as time permits. This is a Zoom webinar, so your cameras and microphones will be not usable. Also, please note that this series is a product of Atlantic and Cape May County, and some information may only be unique to this courthouse in Atlantic and Cape May County. Please be sure to check with your county just for any other specific items at this time. Today's presentation will cover interpreting services and will be presented by subject matter experts Angela Jackson, team leader, and Richard Palacio, court interpreter. We hope you enjoyed today's session, and thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angela Jackson, and this is Richard Palacio.
Good afternoon, everyone.
We are part of the interpreting unit here at Vicinage 1 in Atlantic and Cape May counties. Currently, we have two courthouses in Atlantic, which would be the Atlantic City Courthouse, and we also have a criminal courthouse in Mays Landing, New Jersey, as well as a courthouse in Cape May Courthouse, which is the Cape May Criminal Courthouse as well. We cover interpreting services for all three courthouses, and that some of the languages in the past 12 months that we've covered include French, Portuguese, Bengali, Hindi, Hungarian, and we've actually covered 36 different languages in the last 12 months, including indigenous languages. Spanish, of course, is covered. We have 4 staff interpreters, including Richard Palacio. And we have 1 located in Cape May Courthouse, 2 in Atlantic City Courthouse, and 1 located in the Mays Landing Criminal Courthouse. We cover interpreting services through 3 different methods: live, video remote interpreting, which is VRI, and telephonic.
This diagram here, I hope would illustrate how it is that we connect to the Zoom meeting. Over on the left-hand side of the diagram, you have the host or the moderator. This is the person who works closely with the judge and is familiar with the caption of and the docket number of the case, and they will facilitate the Zoom meeting and the Spanish or the foreign language channel for the sake of the person needing the interpreter. Over on the right, you have the interpreter who is listening into the court procedure via a laptop, typically, and listening in as it's being done in English. And through another device, oftentimes, probably the cell phone, is interpreting into that device, which is connected to the Spanish or the foreign language channel for the benefit of the person needing the interpreter.
Live interpreting is the most efficient way of interpreting and for the court users, but video remote interpreting is the best remote interpreting service available after live. It's done simultaneously, which makes the process go a lot quicker. And we also provide that service virtually and hybrid for hybrid matters. In order for the court user to take advantage of that particular method, they would have to have a laptop, an iPad, an iPhone, or some sort of Android device, including a tablet or a cell phone. If they do not have those devices, they're more than welcome to come into any courthouse, and we can provide tech rooms where a staff member would be more than willing to help them set up. A Zoom link is always provided by the court staff. If you need a court interpreter, we ask that you please notify the court as quickly as possible prior to your court date. If you're represented by an attorney, we ask that you notify your attorney so that services can be provided and available at the time of your hearing. If you have any kind of documents they are required to be translated prior to you coming to court, especially for evidentiary proceedings.
The court interpreter has one function only, and that is to interpret everything that's being said in the courtroom. And so many times the court interpreter may ask you where you're from, just to get a sense of maybe if there are any dialect issues or any kind of nuances in the languages, maybe forms of expression or idiomatic expressions. And just to acquaint the interpreter with maybe a different kind of accent than what they may be used to hearing. So there may be some help that the attorney will need also. The interpreters are available to do attorney-client conferences. Many times these are done in a small conference room. Sometimes here in criminal court, they're done in the holding cells. So that is when the attorney and the client are in communication with another. We can do this also VRI, remotely. The interpreter by oath must interpret everything that is being said in the courtroom, whether it is the judge issuing a ruling or even just the secretary saying, Your Honor, did you want a copy of that? Everything that's being said, every hesitation is also interpreted. And the interpreter has to do it into what we call the target language. So if the interpreter is hearing a hearing being done in English, as is always the case with us, that would be what we call the source language, and the language that we would be interpreting into would be what we call the target language. And we, by oath, must interpret everything that's said without adding anything, without omitting anything, or without changing anything. In fact, we're really not even allowed to explain anything. So it can be quite challenging to try to keep in mind everything that is being said and everything that's uttered. It can sometimes be difficult when the speaker is not speaking in complete sentences, or they may be very inarticulate, or if they're emotionally charged, sometimes testimony can come out at rapid pace. And so this poses certain challenges to the interpreter. And so the interpreter is bound by rules of confidentiality, like many other staff and personnel here at the judiciary. So we cannot repeat to anyone what is said privately between the attorney and the client. There are quite a few things the interpreter cannot do. First and foremost, the interpreters cannot give any legal or other advice. Many times, people who need the interpreter are frightened of the sophistication of the judicial system here in New Jersey and elsewhere in the United States. We have a quite a very well-structured judicial system compared to many countries around the world. In fact, in many countries, particularly countries that are underdeveloped, their judicial systems really only work for a select few number of people and is almost absent from everyday life. And this may lead to violence in many countries. So a lot of times when they come in, they just don't know what to expect. They're afraid for many reasons, and they may look to the interpreter as someone who can really identify with them because they may be the only person that can speak to them, and so they want to get legal advice, and we cannot give that. Usually we orient them to an attorney or to some staff member that may be able to answer a question regarding what procedure might be taking place. We are not allowed to talk to them about their cases at all. Many times they think that we have the entire file stored away in our heads, and they want to know, when their court date is or what's going to happen. We simply don't know that. We cannot explain what certain words mean in court. There are many terms even English speakers may struggle with in understanding, as some of the terminology and legalese is quite foreign to people even who are native speakers of English. Well, the same is true of native speakers of any foreign language. And so we have to be careful not to explain what certain words mean. We cannot answer any questions about what might be happening to them in court. That is oftentimes left to the judge to decide. We cannot have any private conversations with them or the family. Here, of course, the one exception to this is that we can have just a basic conversation to get a feel for that person's language, whether or not they have, they come from different dialects or something. And sometimes people are very confident or want to sort of communicate to the judge that they are upstanding citizens in the United States, and so they may feel like they should, or that the outcome of their case may be better if they can prove to the judge they don't need an interpreter, almost as if to say, I'm part of this society, I'm well adapted, you don't have to worry about me, I'm not going to be taxing the system at all. But sometimes they can run into trouble with understanding things. Sometimes the judge is unable to understand their expressions in English because of a very heavy accent. And so sometimes the judge will order them to use the interpreter. But if they hesitate, if they will initially say they don't want the interpreter oftentimes is called to another courtroom to interpret. So if you have any questions, you can ask a lawyer or a judge or a court staff person. You can ask the interpreter, but the interpreter will only hopefully orient you to the right person to answer your question. And the interpreter, in most cases, is happy to interpret your question to whether it be the judge, an attorney, or some staff member. If you're having trouble understanding the interpreter, please let the judge know that, or the attorney that is working with you. And we can see about either finding another interpreter that may be better understood, or sometimes some people may come to the court representing that they are able to speak one of the main languages, but in fact have a better understanding and fluency in some kind of like maybe a indigenous language that is rarely spoken. And so in that case, that would necessitate a highly specialized interpreter. Okay, to become an interpreter, it is a journey, the first of which is lifelong experience. An interpreter must gain proficiency in the source language, which is in most cases English. Just to give you an idea, to pass the written test as the English portion of the written test, which is the first step in the process, you can think of maybe being proficient enough at maybe a 5th, 6th, or 7th grade level English. That would be enough to get you into taking the test. So there are 3 steps that we take. One, we have to prepare for these tests. Secondly, we have to take the tests and pass at a score that the state considers sufficient enough to be able to work in the courts. And then finally, once we do pass these tests, we can register, and our names appear on a registry that the judiciary uses to fulfill the demand for interpreting services. So to qualify, as I mentioned, you have to start off taking a written exam, and that's just a proficiency. So the first, the English portion may be something like a 5th or 6th or 7th grade level English, but the same has to be true in the foreign language that you're testing in. So it does require lifelong experience, not just study. I don't know how anyone can really pass any of these tests by learning a language out of a textbook. It really does require immersion in whatever culture it is that you're trying to learn. And so once you do pass the written exam, you are then authorized to go ahead and take the interpreter's exam. And the The interpreter exam is made up of 3 parts. One of them is the sight translation, meaning being able to read a document in the target or the source language and be able to sight translate it. In other words, almost simultaneously read it in the target language. So it could be some kind of document like a birth certificate or some kind of notarized document that might be used in a legal proceeding. And then there is the simultaneous portion of the exam. This is where maybe the interpreter is, or the test taker is listening to a hearing where they're speaking at about 120 words a minute for about 10 or 15 minutes. And the test taker is interpreting everything into the target language simultaneously, meaning as the interpreter is hearing it or the test taker is hearing it. And that is recorded and then later graded by some specialists up in Trenton. Thirdly, to pass the oral exam, this is the that is the simultaneous and also the consecutive portion, meaning that the hearing is you're listening, the test taker is listening to the hearing, and the speaker during the hearing may say something like 3 to 5 sentences, and then the recording is stopped, and the interpreter must then render an interpretation of exactly what was said. And that requires some note-taking, some use of shorthand. All of these things to pass these tests require a tremendous amount of study and preparation, pretty intensively. I'd say Monday through Friday, at least 30 minutes a day for 6 months. That might get you to a conditional level, meaning you're okay, but you still need to test up to be able to work for the judiciary as a staffer.
Okay, so now we have the question portion of the webinar. If anyone has any questions, you could please enter them now into the chat. You haven't done so already? Let's see, just waiting for some to pop up here. It doesn't look like any questions are coming in as of now, so we would just move on to the next part here. Okay. So thank you for watching today's presentation, and thank you to our subject matter experts and our Spanish interpreter. We would love to have some feedback about this program. Using the QR code on the screen, please take a moment to answer a brief survey about today's program. You will receive a link via email after this session ends, and as well as a flyer for the remaining webinar topics. If you are looking for more information on this series, please contact the Office of NAWBUSM, the office that I currently work in, and we will address anything else that you may have for future webinars. Thank you all, and this concludes today's session.